The M1 MacBook Air has been out for just over 3 years now, and that's led to a lot of people questioning why Apple still sells this laptop on its website. So what I'm going to do in today's video is answer the question of whether or not you should purchase the M1 MacBook Air in 2023. For those of you who want a straight upfront conclusion, I'm just going to say that the answer is a resounding yes. For 99% of people out there, this base model M1 MacBook Air is still the way to go. However, there are a few people who should probably avoid getting this machine, and I'll explain who those people are later on. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. So let's talk a bit about performance first, because this really was the highlight of the M1 MacBook Air when it debuted back in 2020. A lot of you may know, Apple used to rely on Intel for their chips, and these performed pretty poorly when it came to thermal performance and battery life. And so Apple decided to switch to their own custom-made silicon chips, a bit like how they use in the iPhone or the Apple Watch or the iPad. And if any of you have used an iPhone or an iPad before, you know that you experience almost zero issues with performance because the software and the hardware are literally optimized to work together. And now we have a similar case with the Macs, where even in 2023, the M1 chips perform blisteringly fast on macOS. Apps open extremely quickly, they run smoothly, the system is always snappy, you can multitask between multiple apps all at once. In fact, I don't think this machine has crashed even once during my time owning it. And that's after 2 OS updates as well. And given how long Macs typically tend to last, I would expect that you could get another 3 to 5, maybe even more years of OS updates out of this thing. And yes, I know that some people will say that we've got new M3 chips which have been announced, and yes, these are technically faster on paper, but I think in the real world, what people actually care about is their day-to-day performance. And what my day-to-day experience as a student has taught me is that this base model M1 MacBook Air is more than enough for most people. If you're a student, a professional using Microsoft Office, a writer, or even a light content creator, the performance that you're going to get with this machine is more than perfect. Having said all of this is a MacBook Air, which means it's a consumer laptop that's marketed towards the average consumer audience. So if you want to use this for pro-level tasks, and I mean literal pro-level tasks like video editing or graphic design or 3D modeling, then yes, there is going to be a limit to how much you can push this machine. I've personally had no issues running this YouTube channel and editing all of my videos on DaVinci Resolve using this machine, but I know that if my videos were to become a bit more complex, if I started adding multiple layers of 4K footage and color grading them, then this thing might start to slow down a little bit, especially because it doesn't come with a fan, and so the machine's only option is to thermal throttle and slow down the performance to stop the laptop from overheating. But again, remember, MacBook Airs were never designed to handle these kinds of pro-level tasks. So I think that the fact that we can even talk about video editing and photo editing on a machine like the M1 MacBook Air is just remarkable in and of itself. Really, my biggest pet peeve with the M1 MacBook Air is the fact that you can only hook it up to one external display at a time, which is really annoying because if you're an office worker who wants to work from home and you want to mimic your dual monitor setup, you have to go for the more expensive MacBook Pros, which I think is just an annoying limitation on Apple's part. Now moving on to the battery life. Again, this machine is just phenomenal. Apple states on their website that you can get around 15 to 17 hours of web browsing and video playback on this device. And from my day-to-day experience, I found that if you're using this laptop for work, you'll easily get through a day, maybe even 2 full working days using this thing. In fact, I remember when I first bought this machine, I went through an entire 5 days of not having to charge this thing. 5 days. Now granted, I was using it somewhat lightly, but if this was a Windows PC, it would have died overnight, most likely. And it just goes to show how efficient these M1 chips really are. You close the lid of the laptop on a Friday evening and come back on the Monday morning, you'll have only lost 1, maybe 2% of your battery life over the weekend. Now contrast that to a Windows PC where your laptop will have likely died if you forgot to shut it down over the weekend. Again, it comes back to that analogy I used earlier of this being like an iPhone or an iPad, where you never actually need to shut this laptop down because of how efficient the battery is. And it's completely eliminated any battery anxiety I have about using this machine. You know, I could have gone traveling for the weekend and having forgot my laptop charger at home, and I'd have no worries about this thing being able to last me through the weekend. And if you're coming from an older Intel-based Mac or a Windows PC, this can be quite hard to appreciate because you're probably used to having to tether your laptop to a wall just to stop the fans from constantly going off. But yeah, TLDR, battery life on this thing is nothing short of incredible. As far as design goes, this laptop still feels very premium. Even though it is a 5-year-old design, the aluminium design still feels extremely solid, especially compared to the plastic designs you get with most Windows PCs at this price point. You've got that famous wedge-shaped design, which I think actually makes for a better and more comfortable typing experience than the newer MacBooks, because it puts your hands in a more comfortable typing position. So if you're somebody who types a lot, maybe you're a writer or a student taking notes, then that's another plus. Obviously, we've got everything else that you would expect from a MacBook: the solid speakers, the world-class trackpad, the comfortable typing experience with Touch ID at the top as well. You've got excellent travel on the keys, that liquid retina display, which again is just world-class. The only downsides I can think of when it comes to the design are the thick bezels, which do look a tad dated in 2023. There's also the fact that the brightness of this display only goes up to 400 nits, which means that if you want to use this laptop outside in the sun, you might struggle viewing some of your content. Being based in the UK, that's almost never an issue for me because we never get any sun here. But if you live in a hot country, it might be something to bear in mind. Also, the 720p webcam on this device is pretty poor. So if you are going to be taking a lot of meetings or doing video interviews off your laptop, I'd recommend investing in an actual webcam or using your iPhone's webcam through the continuity camera feature. Now, there are a number of ways that you can get your hands on one of these machines. So currently you can buy the base model M1 MacBook Air, brand new, directly from Apple for about £999 in the UK or dollars in the US. And that will come with 8GB of RAM and 256GB of SSD storage. You can also get an even bigger discount by going to the Apple Refurbished store, which you can learn more about by clicking on the link at the top of this video. However, I'd actually recommend going to a third-party retailer, whether that's Amazon or John Lewis, because these retailers typically offer much larger discounts. Like the fact that this MacBook, which I use for work every single day, cost me less than my iPhone 15 Pro Max and my 11-inch iPad Pro with the Magic Keyboard. Like, it just goes to show how much of a steal this thing really is. But yeah, to conclude, the base model M1 MacBook Air is probably the best value for money laptop that you can purchase on planet Earth right now. And so if you're a student, a writer, a blogger, an office worker, or just somebody who wants a normal laptop for general mixed use, I'd highly recommend going for this thing. Obviously, if you have the higher budget, you can always go for an M2 MacBook Air, which has a slightly nicer design. Or if you're a pro user, and I mean like a genuine pro user, like you work in Hollywood or a YouTuber or something, then, you know, probably go for the MacBook Pro. But yeah, that brings us to the end of the video. Do let me know in the comments down below if you've got any questions about the M1 MacBook Air or this video in general. If you found this video useful, hit the like button, and if you'd like to see more content like this in the future, hit subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next one.